Good morning. Good morning. There we go. First, I'd like to apologize in advance to those of you who attended last year's conference in San Antonio and who recall that I spoke in precisely the same role 1 year ago. So, you may have a sense, to borrow a line from the great philosopher Yogi Berra, that it's deja vu all over again. And in fact, I will be coming back to some of the same themes I touched on in my remarks last year at this time. But as they say, that was then, this is now. And believe me, what a difference a year makes. I don't think many of us had much of an inkling then that the economy was just about to fall off the edge of a cliff. Least of all, our visiting economist, or just how long that fall would be. We also had very little idea what to expect from the upcoming presidential election, which was still looking like a pretty close race at that stage, and it was far from clear what we could expect from either candidate, since both of them were running from the center and away from the policies of the Bush administration. And the issue of sustainability, which I talked about in my speech last year, was probably on our radar screens, along with other issues, but it was still a long way from being a central feature of the American industrial policy. But again, what a difference a year makes. The past 12 months have truly taught us the meaning of the old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. And I might add that the interesting times in which we now live are underwritten in large measure by Chinese investments in U.S. debt, to the tune of almost $1 trillion and still rising. In fact, one measure of how much our economy has changed from a year ago is that where we once reckoned increases in the federal deficit by hundreds of billions, we now reckon in trillions. And just a month or so ago, we learned that the White House's previous 10-year deficit projections were about $2 trillion short of the $9 trillion they're now estimating. $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. We never dreamed a year ago that Congress would pass a $787 billion stimulus bill and then debate just a few months later whether it was actually big enough. It seems like only yesterday Bill Clinton was balancing the budget and telling us that the era of big government was really over. Well, you don't have to drive very far from this auditorium to see that. It's back. And I mention all this, not to advance any sort of partisan political agenda. You don't have to drive very far in this town to find one of those either. But rather, I want to emphasize just how dramatically the business environment has changed, particularly where the role of the federal government is concerned. Those of you who heard my speech last year remember, I said that we were moving into an era of intensive challenge and rapid change, unlike any we've seen in our lifetimes. As the era of cheap energy comes to a close, and we move into a new era of renewable energy and sustainable technology. I may have had to do a little convincing on that score a year ago, but today, even with energy prices much lower than they were last October, I don't think I have to make much of a case for the fact that the age of sustainability is here, and here to stay, both as a matter of public policy and an accepted fact of public opinion. Now, people may argue whether the cap-and-trade bill passed by the House and currently under the consideration of the Senate is the best way to move the country in that direction, but few are debating whether sustainability is the direction in which we want to move. For some, their reasons have mainly to do with global warming and reducing greenhouse gases. And for others, they have to do with reducing our dependence on resources that are mostly found in unstable parts of the world. You know the story. And for others, it's about continuing the growth of globalization by adding cheaper and more sustainable energy technologies into the mix to help replace a finite and ever-dwindling supply of fossil fuels. And for most of us in this room, I suspect it's probably more like all the above. Since none of the arguments for energy efficiency and renewable sources of supply really exclude any of the others. As I said last year, we have the science, we have the technology, we have the intellectual capital to make products lighter, cheaper, safer, stronger, quieter, more versatile, and more energy efficient. That's what we do. and to do it everywhere, from automobiles, appliances, and packaging, to houses, public buildings, and factories. What we need is innovation, the will to creatively apply what we already know and what we already do best to the new challenge of sustainability. We also need the ability to communicate the solutions we come up with so that our stakeholders, and yes, even our critics and detractors, understand that we are part of the solution and not part of the problem. And of course, that's where CPI and its many downstream partners really come into play. So, for all this change in the last 12 months, the key themes I talked about at last year's conference still apply. And they are, sustainability, innovation, communication. You'll be tested later on this. The only difference is that the stakes have gone higher. I know a lot of companies out there are in a fight for their survival in this economy. By almost any measure, the worst since the end of World War II. The construction market has cratered. The automobile industry is in the fight of its life. Consumers, to use another Yogi Berraism, are staying away in droves. It's ugly out there. So get out there and spend your money. Please help the economy. And to steal a page out of Rahm Emanuel's playbook, we shouldn't let a good crisis go to waste. I've said it before, but let me say it again. Innovation is what this industry does best. Over the next couple of days, you're going to see all the proof you can ask for, in the form of technical talks and exhibits that showcase the innovative potential of polyurethanes in scores of applications that improve energy efficiency, reduce waste and cost, while enhancing safety, comfort, and convenience. This is a tremendously exciting and competitive arena. And as my colleague, Richard Skrapinski, will describe shortly, you're going to have the chance to vote on some of the most original of these innovations for awards that will be presented at the end of the conference. But I also want to point out that, though this is a technical conference, not all the innovations are purely technical in nature. We have a growing opportunity to innovate in partnership with government, which is falling in behind sustainability and green technology in a major way. Consider, for example, a bill sponsored by FEMA and supported by ACC, currently pending in the House of Representatives, the Energy Efficient Commercial Roofs Act of 2009, which provides a 30% tax credit for high-insulating polyurethane roofs installed on new and existing commercial buildings, as well as high-rise residential buildings. Right now, commercial buildings account for 18% of the energy use and CO2 emissions in the U.S. So we're talking about a very substantial opportunity. It's estimated that the 20-year cumulative energy cost savings just replacing the roofs on existing buildings would be $10 billion, while the CO2 emissions reduction would amount to 12.2 million metric tons, or roughly what an average coal-fired power plant spews out over the course of 16 years. Again, this represents not only a huge market for the polyurethane industry, but a tremendous opportunity for the U.S. to achieve solid and real progress in limiting CO2 emissions. So, I think a lot of us are accustomed to looking at government and NGOs as regulatory adversaries. Those times have changed. We need to look at the government and NGOs as potential partners and to show them that we can work with them to help them achieve their public policy goals, particularly where energy efficiency and renewable energy are concerned. Our keynote speaker, ACC President Cal Dooley, will explain this is exactly what the ACC is doing with its carbon life cycle analysis. The chemical industry, and especially our polyurethane sector, must stay out of the middle ground and continue to demonstrate that we are a crucial part of the climate solution. As I mentioned last year, another area where we have the potential for innovation partnerships is with our own downstream industry groups in areas where we face common challenges like combustibility, environment, health, safety, recycling and recovery, building codes and standards, energy and climate change, chemical regulation, and transportation. For example, in the spray foam industry, we launched a substantial effort to promulgate health and safety guidance for contractors. In concert with the Spray Polyurethane Foam Alliance, we've embarked on a very important, very robust product stewardship program that's moved into full gear this fall. I might add that as we promote the health and safety of the products within our industry, we also have an opportunity to direct our message upward and stress the energy efficiency and sustainability benefits of polyurethane products. Both sides of the coin, health, safety, and efficiency, sustainability, speak to our stewardship as an industry. And both sets of messages, internal and external, are crucial to our success. As I mentioned last year, the shift away from petroleum and other fossil fuels has the potential to cast a negative light on all products that rely on oil-based feedstock. Again, this is where stakeholder communication is critical. We have to demonstrate how effectively and efficiently we use the very small fraction of total oil consumption that's actually needed for plastic feedstocks, and highlight the ways in which the polyurethane industry is working to reduce that need even further. We also must help folks outside the industry appreciate the distinction between the embodied energy insulation options and the energy savings over time from better performing polyurethane insulation. Policymakers, regulators need to understand that the payback period on energy investment can be months, while the energy saving impact is the life of a typical building between 30 and 50 years. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but we all need to become polyurethane evangelists in the coming year, because the next 12 to 18 months will be critical in shaping public perceptions of our industry. We can be seen to be green, or we can be tarred with a different brush. It's really up to us and how forcefully we get our message out. It was just 50 years ago that a writer named Vance Packard sent the manuscript to his publisher, the David McKay Company, for a book that would become the first national bestseller on the subject of sustainability. Not to mention the required reading for the incoming Kennedy administration. It was called The Wastemakers. And he summarized his argument this way, and I quote, "Wastefulness has become part of the American way of life. This stems in large part from the fantastic productivity of the nation's mechanized, often automated offices, factories, and farms. That productivity is the essential fact, yet a people as ingenious and enterprising as Americans should be able to solve the problems posed by the famously productive machines without undue adversity and without being forced to make a virtue of wastefulness," unquote. And well, as they say, nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And though it's taken 50 years, I am convinced, even more than I was a year ago, that sustainability is an idea whose time has truly come. What we need to do as an industry is to seize this opportunity, make productive use of this crisis, to demonstrate to the world just how ingenious and enterprising we can be. So can we show the country a way forward to a sustainable future through vigorous innovation and relentless communication? Yes, we can. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Cal Dooley, President and CEO of the American Chemistry Council. In September, Cal celebrated his one-year anniversary at ACC. And in that short time, he helped the association become a more focused and effective advocacy organization. It's not surprising that Cal understands advocacy. He served 7 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives, a moderate Democrat representing a large Republican district in California, a member of the House Agriculture and House Resources Committee. Cal was a founder of the New Democrat Coalition.